Hey everybody, and welcome to TNMCoaching Unplugged and Zoran Todorovic Interconnected podcast. It's always joy and happiness to see you, and I'm so happy that our international community is growing. Once again, we're highly grateful for you recommending us. We receive a lot of good recommendations from our audience, and as a result of you, we're growing. So keep on. This is the space when you elevate your mind, you elevate your heart, you elevate your soul to the next level and beyond. This is a space when you get inspired with a new thinking, with a new being, and how can you live your work life and your life in the best possible way forward. And today we have a very special guest, Linda Grönfors. She is a serial entrepreneur, speaker. She's also a coach. She's dedicated herself at this moment in time to limitless potential that she knows is within people. What is very special about her is that she started her entrepreneurial journey very early on in her life, just when she was 14. And since then, she combined the corporate experience, boldness, adventure, and venture, international trade, coaching, AI innovation, and so on and so forth. She's really somebody who is very unique and special because at a really young age, she already began working with the human development and human potential. She combines science with human potential and then also conscious leadership. As you know from me, this is one of my favorite topics when we talk about the science, human potential, what we're capable of achieving, conscious leadership, how do we go forward? This is something that I love, and this is why I love that Linda is with us today. And she has also worked across the industries, leading or consulting and coaching leaders and entrepreneurs to shift from being exhausted to being expanded. And this is something that I really love about Linda. Sometimes when we think about exhaustion, fatigue, tiredness, burnout, and so on and so forth, how can we use all of this to shift those energies into something much more expansive when we can move from surviving and struggling to truly thriving? And I really believe in that as well. So today we're going to look into this. We're going to look into high performance. We're going to look into how to prevent burnout. We can look into how to become the greatest catalyst of our personal evolution and how to really realize our potential. So enjoy this ride. And Linda, welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Zoran, for a beautiful introduction. I'm so happy to be here with you and everyone listening and tuning in.
So as I mentioned to people, you've been a serial entrepreneur, you've started companies, working in the corporate. So what inspired you to start a company that is solely focusing on human potential, human need at this moment in time? What is behind that? What is your passion? What is your drive?
Yeah, thanks for the holistic question to kickstart this conversation. So, it's been a long, bumpy ride, I would say. And I think something that really I always refer back to is that when I was very young, even as a kid, I had this crazy spark inside of me that I really felt that there is no limitations, anything is possible, and this inner drive of a belief that if I can think it, I can achieve it. And this kind of like was my gift as a kid, and that has taken me very far on my journey. And obviously we will go to the parts of where it has also been a bottleneck, but that has really been like the kickstarter. And the more I followed that, like I followed that gift that I had, the more I started to explore different parts of myself, what I can do, where can I thrive, where can I help and support others. And through that journey of like learning so much about myself and also my own weaknesses, hitting burnout at one point, I kind of like realized that what I've done unconsciously most of my life has been to explore what is it that I'm truly capable of. And at one point it was just like, wow, this is the actual like going towards your own potential. So I kind of like by mistake realized that that's my journey. And that's when I started to translate it more with a more conscious approach of like, how can I study this more consciously? How can I bring and activate this in other people more consciously? So to be fully honest, it was more like me using my gift, stumbling upon that this is what I have been naturally doing, and then leaning fully into that and bringing it into my purpose. And obviously it has become my passion, like learning the different layers about yourself and helping people to really find their unique edge, their individual potential, because I don't believe that there's any one size fits all approach in anything. And we all have so much more individuality to pour out if we learn the tools and the mechanics of how can we tap into that. So yeah, that has truly become of my passion.
Yeah, and I love how you mentioned that to do your personal exploration and what you've done in your life. You know, you were looking into yourself, into your own potential, and then helping people to grow their own. I just want to kind of dive into one concept which is really dear again to my heart, which is that some people do believe that potential is limitless, and some people believe that potential is limited. Some people believe that we're quite limited in what we can accomplish and achieve. And like yourself, I always had a big frustration with this when I'm coaching and teaching people and they believe in limitations. Like, how can you believe in limitation? But what I would really love to explore within you, how did you arrive to this point when you begin sensing and feeling that actually our potential is limitless? That exactly as you said, whatever we can think, we can achieve, whatever we can imagine, we can dream out and achieve, whatever we can act, we can achieve. So how is that sitting within you? What would you say?
Mm. Oh, that's such a beautiful question and such a nuanced one. I want to start with the longer part, or like the more backstory one, which again, I think it was the innocence of a young kid. And I had this like the visualization capability of like, I was someone who was in school, for example, I was constantly in my head, like I was visualizing and daydreaming. And I was like also speaking my ideas to my parents of like, yeah, can we do this? And like I was constantly planning. So I think I never realized what that capability really is in me until I was like one concrete moment in my life. I was, I think 13 years old. And I was like really into horseback riding. I had done it for like almost a decade at that point. And I was like, I want to have my own horse. And this was the part where I was like so sure that I need to have this horse. Like that reality, I already had owned it. And my parents were like, no, like we were not going to buy a horse. And like they were like giving me no and no and no and no. And for 2 years, I kept it. Like I planned it. I was so dedicated that I will have the horse. I even remember I put my parents to like debate against each other. I was leading a debate for telling my mom, like, tell my dad why I should not have a horse. And then I was kind of like telling my dad why you should tell why I should have, even though both of them didn't want me to have it. And this led me to find the solutions. They were like, after these years of like me just trying and getting a no and still continuing and believing that I will have the horse, I realized, okay, this is not the source where I will get it from. So I could have stopped here and be like, okay, it's impossible. This is a limited, like I came to the end road. But that's just like that one road. And this is where I think people go wrong. Just because one way didn't work doesn't mean the end goal is not possible. So what I did instead was like, how can I find other ways to get that horse? And I was like, okay, I need money. How can a 14-year-old earn money? I was trying to get a job, and obviously living in Finland, like you cannot get really employed as 14 years old. It's just not really working.
Yeah.
Yes. So I found a way to educate myself to start a beauty business. And this was my first venture where I was able to educate myself, get a certification. I started to build my client base. I started to do sales. I started working and I started earning money until I actually had the amount to buy this horse. And then I worked on the horse stable to keep the maintenance cost of the horse. So I actually achieved this goal. And this was the point where I was like, I proved to myself that something I really wanted that seemed so impossible. Everyone around me told me, yeah, Linda, it's a nice dream, but you're too young. You will not get it. So this was the proof that I just trusted my inner compass. And this is what I also teach forward. It's like you yourself are the biggest limitation to what's possible. And that's why people don't believe that there is this limitless possibilities, because the most difficult limit in front of you is yourself, your own mind, your own fears, your own limiting beliefs. And if you can understand this kind of like duality that you are the solution, but you're also the problem at the same time, that's where you really start to tap into this limitless essence, because you don't need anything external. You just need you and to work with your own toolbox to actually get to where you want to go. And it might not be this road or that road, but as long as you are working, you will find a road, because you are the asset that will take you to the end result. So
beautiful backstory you gave us, and I love so much the analogy and how you really managed to make sure that we kind of get it and to understand it. So when you say that we are our best asset, but at the same time we also are limitations, and you mentioned a few things like limiting beliefs, closed mindset, shifting perspective. I'm just going to ask you a few more personal questions, and we're going to focus on leaders in your work. How did you manage to overcome this? Did you have a clear understanding of your limitations? Were you able to see this inside of yourself? Did you have teachers or mentors and guides who highlighted this for you? But I'm just curious about your personal journey, because people who listen, to this podcast, they always want to know, but who is Linda? How did Linda manage to do this before we jump into how do we coach others? So what was your hero's journey in that story? How did you manage to see that?
Yes, beautiful. So I think by walking to the wall. So the hard way. And obviously at that young age, it was more like just about following that delusional belief, and I didn't hold the awareness of like the mental conversation, what's going on. So this was more me unconsciously following this gift that I had. And then as I moved forward and started to, get more into self-development, more consciously work on this, I realized that what actually drove me to even get this horse was that it was these emotional, also trauma-related behaviors that were like, I was so used to getting validation from performance and getting things done. So I had this, what I call the high performer identity in a sense. So that was kind of like me just being such a good at doing, performing. And that continued in the corporate world, where I was like, really like, I realized that just because I can get a lot of things done and get forward, it wasn't really on a healthy basis, because it was, it became really this addiction in a sense of like always reaching the next stage. And that's where I kind of like hit the wall of like, I was so exhausted. Like this was the beginning from leading me to the burnout, where I had to start questioning like, where does these behavior stems from? And that's when I say that our gift is always also the kryptonite. So there is always the flip side of the coin. So something that gets you so far usually also is the part that is killing you slowly inside. And if you can really see that flip side of the coin, you can form and reshape this gift to serve you better. So the beginning of starting to reach a burnout, obviously here I started to work with a coach, also a therapist. I got more interested in of like, why do I feel like I neglect my bodily signals? Like the first things were coming out of like, my mind was so strong, the determination and the drive was so strong that I would do it no matter what, even though I was tired, even though my body was screaming for rest. And that's really where more and more, when I continued, that's also where the pattern gets kind of like stamped and solidified even more. So my journey has for sure not been perfect at all. It started with a nice, innocent, beautiful story, but then this was the dark side where it really led, where the more I proved to myself that anything is possible, the more I started to work against me. And that's really the tipping point where I had to do different strategies. And I'm sure we will get into that. But 100%, I work with coaches, I work with therapists. I've done a lot of mirror work, a lot of shadow work, really facing my own dark sides and being able to look into the mirror and be like, okay, what is it in me that is holding myself back? Because if we are not ready to face ourselves fully and question like, what is it in me, in my behavior that is hurting myself or others, we will not really reach that point. And that's where we cannot have this observer point of view, which I'm now kind of like learned to embody more. It's like, just because you have a weakness doesn't make you bad. And it's more like, if we can observe both our good and our bad behavior from a higher standpoint, that's where we can more like effectively work with the tools and with ourselves to mold us to the best version of who we are to look.
What example you are, and thank you so much for that. It was so clear. And I just want everybody to bookmark this who are listening. And sometimes we think that we don't need to do inner work to be able to arrive to the place that Linda is pointing to, that energy is limitless, your potential is limitless, we are limitless. But what Linda is saying to us and what we're learning from her, that in order for us to really fully embody that, we need to be engaged with our shadow aspects. We need to understand what is holding us back. Why do we drive ourselves to the burnout? Why are we neglecting ourselves? What is this default programming that we need to overcome in order for us to be able to step into the stage of limitlessness? And as you have been working with a lot of top performance, top executives, people who are star performers, and they have a similar mindset. They will drive themselves right forward to accomplish, to achieve, to be successful at any cost. And I think that we're now getting into that space when we can be conscious and spiritual enough that we understand that we can succeed, right? And we can be fully successful on all levels. And we can do this in much more consciously aware way when we don't need to burn ourselves throughout the way, correct?
Yes. So
Yeah. Exactly. And that we can also realize our potential in the most beautiful way going forward. So So when people nowadays come and you coach and guide, and through your own example and what you've learned so far and through your wisdom, and people are looking into their potential, and they're saying, well, I just had, for example, a client 2 days ago who is a business person, a long career, came to the point when he says, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I don't know what is my next potential. I don't know what is my next purpose. I'm fully confused. I don't know. How would you get people into this exploration? So what would you do to get them to really start exploring, unfolding, thinking, and sensing that potential? And what is your method, so to say?
Wow. I think first of all, it depends a lot on the person, what's their journey. And this is a coach, like it depends. But I would say that maybe a similarity or something that combines most of these cases is really asking the question of why. And like, it's super simple, but it's like, why are you not fulfilled? Why is it? And that's the first step for you to even open the possibility to start being honest to yourself. And that's where the second step comes is brutal honesty, because we often know already why we are not happy or why we're not where we want to be. But the question is, does our ego allow us to actually admit that or not? And that's really where the brutally honesty part comes off. Like, are you ready to be brutally honest? And if you're not kind of like preparing for that, just, sitting with yourself and trying to find out, like, how can I gain the confidence or the security to really face this? And then I think a key challenge is also that many people, they work, and then they are so siloed that they feel like they have really reached the wall and there is nothing behind it. So one way could also be like, okay, if you feel like you cannot face this or start working on it, let's paint the alternative reality so that you have something to kind of like gain hope from, or something to model or mirror your situation towards. So really maybe starting the easier way of like, what is it that you would really want? And then start mapping that. And once that becomes more possible in your mind, and when you do this work, you're also subconsciously priming your mind to think that this is a possibility because you're already thinking it. So these are some simple tools to kind of like just start it. So it depends truly where you are, but these would be the ones of like the why, the truth, and do you know the alternative reality, or like the other side of the where you currently are.
Exactly. And I think that power of imagination, Linda, as you're talking about, is so important. And I love what you're doing, because I do the same thing, like, why are you unhappy? What really prevents you being unhappy? Being brutally honest sometimes, because we as a coaches believe that people do have those solutions. They do have that inner knowledge, but sometimes, as we know, we can protect ourselves, defend. We don't want to know. When somebody who loves us tells us something about ourselves that it's really true and we don't want to accept it, we hide and shy and we defend. And the real exploration and that inquiry, Linda, I believe as well, comes with this why. And what I love with your method as well, when it comes to looking into the potential, it's also this using this power of imagination. When you can really visualize it in your mind, you can see it as alternative reality. I think that we are just scratching the surface of that possibility, right? How powerful that whole imagination is. Like, one of my favorite quotes from Albert Einstein was, the imagination is the most powerful tool available to humankind. Even though he was a scientist and he used his mind, in the scientific processes, he always relied on his imagination as the most powerful tool to create realities or alternative realities that you can live, if current reality is not what you're enjoying, right? So it's really cool, isn't it?
Yes, and I think you're actually touching a very crucial point, because maybe some of the listeners may feel like, imagination, we often don't have context to that. And it might seem like for a very logically driven person, it's like, whatever. But there is so much science behind it, and like even like a scientist like saying these things. And the fact that your brain doesn't actually recognize what is reality, like your subconscious brain doesn't recognize what is reality, what is thought. It's like, it's this unity view of like, it takes everything in and it doesn't fully understand the context. So understanding the science of the brain, plus the fact of like how much studies we've already like accomplished in like people, the famous one of like the piano example, someone actually playing the piano and someone just imagining and visualizing to play the piano. And then they saw that this person who only visualized actually was able to perform the same piano song as the one who performed it with physical practice. So we get more knowledge, and I think this is I'm sure that you're also you agree with me. that the less people know about mechanisms of how the human body, mind, and spirit actually works, the less we believe in these different tactics. But the more we have awareness and knowledge of how do I function as a human from a psychological, physiological, biological, mental levels, and spiritual, that's where it all becomes more clear, because we only know what we know. And once we know more, that's where the path starts to unfold. So yeah.
Love that clarity. Thank you so much for that. And I'm going to now shift us into the space of spiritual intelligence, because I know that you and I have a connecting point, that consciousness, spirituality. So let's explore that dimension of consciousness, spirituality, especially, how that later on connects into with leaders and entrepreneurs, and how this actually helps us live a better and more sustainable life. So in your own journey into connection to consciousness and spirituality, what was the most significant initiating point for you to become aware, become conscientious? What happened? Is it one or two things in your life that really got you to become awaken, as we said in spiritual circles?
It's a very profound question. And I think yes and no. There was a couple of these very powerful moments of awakening. And I think this is also a difficult area to enter, because some believe that awakening happens like this, and some believe it's like stages. And I believe we all have our own experience. So I'm only talking about my own experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So for me, I think the core initiation was when I hit the burnout. And I kind of like, this was something I really call the ego death for me, because until that point, my ego had driven me of like external validation, getting the, all the approval from the outside. And when I hit burnout, and me as a high achiever could not get out of bed, did not know what I want, everything was like, my body was like totally overwhelmed. That was a moment where I had to face the truth. Like, my mind had been running so long to not face those truths that we discussed, until my body crashed. And now I was forced to face the truth. So this was the part where the old identity was like ripped apart. And that really started to awaken this more deep, purpose-driven spirit in me. And that was what I call like the true nature, like my highest potential started to awaken then. And it was painful, it was difficult, and it came in ups and downs. So sometimes obviously we fall back to old behaviors until we can fully integrate the new learnings. So that was the first point. And then the deeper I went, I realized that, in my opinion, awakening happens in 3 stages. It's the body, it's the mind, and it's finally the spiritual. So I feel like first something happens physically, you need to get to know your body, then something you intellectually become aware, and then finally you become spiritually, energetically fully aware. So these were kind of like the steps I walked through. And as the body happened, then the mind, I just got so much of different knowledge. Like, I just saw that what is the possibility on a spiritual frame. And that's where the final part came, and my Kundalini actually awakened, which I don't know if we want to go deeper here, and that's also awakening different types of opinions, but that was a very spontaneous Kundalini energy awakening that came, and that was kind of like aligning me fully to the higher consciousness, so to say. So yeah.
For people who don't know what the Kundalini awakening is, Google it, AI it. It's a phenomenon. I know what it is, and we don't have time to get into it if you go that direction. But it's bookmark this and just to see that what that means. But in a way, what you're saying, Linda, is that your highest potential has been awakened at this moment in time, right?
Yes, and I think it's like by this moment in time, and then every day I'm awakening more into that, obviously.
Exactly. So we're looking into initiation, and it's so interesting to me all the time when I'm talking to people on the podcast that all the people like yourself, similar category, they always have to have something tough, right? It always needs to be this rite of passage, something challenging, like losing something, going into the burnout, losing job, losing cat, losing dog, some kind of hardship to get us to that stage of really being willing to open up. Isn't that funny how we human work?
Yes, it's fascinating, and I think that answers to the first part of like why so many people might not believe in the limitless. It's like because it's difficult, it's painful, it's a very tough journey, and so it kind of like the more you receive, the more it also takes from you. So the higher the highs, the lower the lows, and that's how the wave starts to move.
Exactly. And for that, we require to be a little bit more courageous. We require to have a little bit more of open heart to be able to navigate us to these processes. Because I also feel that there is no light without dark, as this is a very typical saying. There is no huge success without struggle. Everybody goes through that. And sometimes we think that life in itself should just be a big comfort zone. People strive to be comfortable. I talk to a lot of people who work in organizations, and one of the key motivators, safety, security, stability, comfort, right? It needs to be comfortable. When there is a change, there is like, oh my God, now we have a change. What are we going to do? We're freaking out. When we know that, as through your example, what you shared so far, that life is not always comfortable. It requires pains, it requires growing stretches, it requires us to engage and really get into that depth of darkness sometimes in order for us to be able to transform and get into the spiritual level or awakenings and awareness, and then in relationship with our potential. So it is not always an easy journey. And Linda, thank you so much for sharing that, because I think it's important for people to listen to this, because a lot of the times we can get into that bypassing mentality when everything is easy, right? And we know it's not.
Yes. And I think a question that everyone can ask themselves is like, if you are unhappy or you are not fulfilled or you have these negative emotions or whatever it is that you're going through, just to kind of like take a step back and like zoom out. I think it's very powerful to be like, we don't need to take life so seriously, and like really asking like, this challenge, how big is it really? And like there's so many options, and just trying to think about different possibilities, like how can I move forward from this, how can I move past this, and kind of like seeing that if I can challenge me and just taking a leap of like a small challenge in your work, asking for a promotion, or like having a tough conversation. And once you do it once, you kind of like prove to yourself. So once you one step out of the comfort zone, I'm quite sure that that gives so much of positive feedback for you to want to go there more. So just even asking of like, why do we want the comfort? And for many people I work with, and maybe you also experience the same of working with people, is that the comfort zone, it's become this like external safety. But what if I can create this internal safety in me, so I don't need the external safety? And just like starting to be curious and questioning most of the things in your life, and that's where you make this growth mindset much easier for yourself, because you're detaching from these, yeah, old and taking too seriously the things that you think are important, and you actually start finding what is more important. So yeah.
Yeah, and I love that. I've worked a lot in myself to create that sense of internal safety. Sometimes people in the organization always say that people need to have psychological safety in order for them to be able to be high performance. People need to be secure and steady. And I think that the way towards this is that internal safety first and then external safety afterwards. Because sometimes if you're craving safety from the world, and right now, for many, many reasons, world is volatile. It's unpredictable. We started with VUCA world, I remember 5-6 years ago. Then we have this, then we have that, then we have wars. So if you look externally for external safety and validation, it's very difficult to attain it, because you will always be stimulated to feel unsafe, and your nervous system is going to be reactive. But what Linda is saying to all of us, create that stability and safety within, right? And then from there on, develop it outside of yourself, correct?
100%.
Yeah. So tell me, you work with leaders and corporations and businesses, because some of the listeners, not all of them, we have entrepreneurs, self-employed professionals, many, many mixed bunch of people who are listening to this. When you work with the people to prevent burnout, first of all, and then also with people to expand their potential, what are you noticing nowadays in the business world? What's going on from your point of view, and what would you like to share with the people who are listening when it comes to those two topics, preventing the burnout and then building up to what you and I talked to so far, realizing your potential, really getting into the space when you can use the organization to fulfill yourself instead of you just working to fulfill the organization?
Yes. Well, it's a big topic. I'll try to keep it like this, but I would I would say that it comes a lot, kind of like it connects to what we discussed of like, why are you working? Like, are you working to feel good in your job and like really develop your skill sets, or are you working because you need to be a good employee, or you need to something external? So kind of like working with that balance of like, are you taking full responsibility? And I talk a lot about self-leadership, and most of my work with leaders and corporates are in self-leadership. That regardless your role, regardless what you do, you are a leader, and you are leading yourself plus others by the influence your behaviors and energies emit. So when it comes to burnout, I think that a lot comes from this, that there's so much pressure and people are blindly following those tasks, and they don't have the tools necessary to listen to what is your internal being communicating to you, and we're bypassing the overwhelm, the stress, the not knowing or not having enough tools to actually execute your job tasks, lacking communication. So it's a bunch of different things. So I would say that the key thing what I try to teach is like, try to stop there where you see that this is starting to become a problem. And usually it's a simple solution of communicating, or just, trying to find a rest, or like setting up the deadline a little bit forward. So really not allowing the train to move forward until to the point where you are burnt out, because your body, your mind is going to give you signals constantly of overwhelm. And the more you bypass that, the closer you go to the burnout. And it all connects a lot to the awareness again. Like maybe we don't see these communicative sides that our body is giving us. So that obviously is a challenge that we need to address on an individual level. But I would say that this is the key challenge of like every individual having different needs, and then the corporate obviously setting certain standards and needs that needs to be fulfilled. So how can we do that, and how can you take responsibility to break it? Yes. Please ask me a deeper one if you want me to go deeper.
This is really, really good one. And I think that you gave people a process. When it comes to prevention, burnout, I agree. It's like just being able to follow your body and being able to read the signals, and learning how to stop and pause, learning how to breathe, learning how to manage yourself in order to prevent it. And I love what you're sharing, Linda, that it's all about self-leadership. I think all leadership boils down to self-leadership. When we know how to lead ourselves, then we know how to lead others, then we know how to lead organizations, then we know how to lead businesses. But if you're not fully clear about leading ourselves, then it's really difficult. And leading yourself is all about getting to know yourself. And you said it beautifully a few times, because you use the words of it's case-based. I can share my experience, but it's for different people, it's a different story, because we're all unique, especially in our essence. So it's all about, for me, getting to know you, yourself, getting to know your strengths, weaknesses, shadows, glorious things about yourself, getting to know how your body works, what you need to be able to be a sustainable human being, understanding your mind. And, really, I think nowadays, as you mentioned, the mind is such a tool. Learning the tools and skills to manage your mind and then your heart and your emotions, then when we get to know ourselves, then we can regulate, right? And they will be in a situation where we listen to ourselves and never get burned out, because we know we need to slow down, right? So for everybody who's listening, this is something that I would really love you to think about and get into your mindset. What can you do nowadays to come closer and getting to know yourself even more? If you are on the path of awakening and development, and most of you who are listening to this podcast are, what else can you do to get yourself, to get to know yourself even deeper, right?
Yes, I'm with you there.
And I'm happy that you're teaching this. So from that on, let's just slowly go into the wrap of our conversation today. What I would love to end up with is our starting point, which was realization of potential, limitlessness, openness, that we know that everything is possible. We explored the landscapes within that, understanding what we need to do to be able to get there. I just want to remind everybody, we do need to do inner work to be able to come to the limitless. Because if without inner work, you can't go into the limitless, because your shadows are going to hold you back, right? You will hold yourself back, exactly as Linda said. If you are not, you're your best ally and your best enemy. So you need to get to know you in order for you to not be able to hold. But if we get to that, Linda, if you're not holding ourselves in any way, what is your most evolved and most beautiful vision for what is possible for humanity? I would like you to just breathe in and breathe out, because this is my kind of closing question to you, because you're such a force of nature, young, inspiring leader, and I love what you're standing for. So if you look into the future, and a lot of people nowadays think about negativity all the time, and I talk to people, news, the things, climate, environment, everything is negative around us. And I really want us to focus on the most positive potential. So from your deepest heart, what is the most positive future available to this humanity?
I think what comes true is I believe that at our core, we are love. Like love is like our actual essence and the strong vibration that we're all emitting, and everything that is happening in the world, and just we're being bombarded with this information, is feeling that frequency of love. And I really think that if we all can do a little bit of work of stepping in closer to our actual potential, the frequency of the whole world, like our humanity, we can increase the vibration where love will become the driving force. And that's, in my opinion, really the beginning of this unity consciousness and the 2.0 version of humanity, where we can really, I see that that's where the limitless possibilities lie if we can build based on love. And I think something we can all do is to think like, how can I connect to that love frequency towards myself and towards others? Because that's really where energetically I think all the possibilities lie. So that's heartfelt answer.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And I also really, really want to empower leaders from businesses. I remember a long time ago when we began using the word love in work, people were freaking out. They were like, what are you talking about? There's no space for this. I think what Linda is empowering us to do is to use that word love in the business, connect to ourselves, love our colleagues, and really amplify this frequency of love, because this is what we need right now to be able to get to the next version of Human 2.0, which we call unity consciousness, where everything is interconnected and beautiful. So we're all working toward this in work, in companies, in businesses, in small businesses, in families. So connect to that. Thank you so much, Linda, for inspiring us in that direction. Thank you so much for sharing this wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing yourself on this podcast. It's really beautiful to have you. One last thing, I always keep on saying one last thing with the inspiring guests. Any practice or anything, any call for action in addition to what you gave us, which is love and step into that space, that you would love to ask for people to do, like anything that you know works well, that you want everybody to practice, or anything that you feel naturally you want to share as a call for action, because this is a coaching podcast and we always like people to grab something and say, as a result of this listening, I will do following.
Yes. Beautiful question. I think something intuitively comes based on what all we have discussed. And I think I want to encourage everyone who is listening now, and to kind of like to wrap all of this up, is like a question, which is like, just sit down with yourself and ask this question from you. What is it that you are ignoring? Because I will bring a little bit context. Imagine it like a baby. You are taking care of a baby and the baby keeps screaming. What do? You're going to pay attention. You're trying to figure out, how can I help this baby? What does this baby need? You're not putting the baby aside and, letting it be there and letting it scream. But this is what we so often do for ourselves. Our body is asking for something. We're always thinking about this dream, but we're ignoring it. We're letting these babies inside of us scream, but we're not doing anything to hear them out and understand what we can do there. So really map out, write a list. What are all the things you are ignoring? You already know it. It can be in your nervous system. I have these weird bodily symptoms, or I don't like my boss at all, or I have this dream that I have been postponing for years. What is it that you're ignoring? Be brutally honest. This is first practice for you to be this brutally honest for yourself. And once you see it on paper, you're already starting the process of taking action on your limitless potential. So I think that would be my practice, to really face those parts, because they're going to be there. The more you ignore them, it's not going to help. The more you start working towards them and admitting, that's where the transformation starts to begin. And one last part on the love aspect, I think you said it beautifully, but I also think that the love is something we all deeply desire and need, whether we admit that or not. But that's really what we all, whether in corporate, whether in our relationships with our friends, with family, that's really what we all want. And maybe we're holding that from ourselves. So yeah, but this is the practice.
Beautiful. Thank you, Linda, so much for this practice. I know I will practice this. As Linda was talking about, wow, I need to do this exercise. I haven't done it for a long time. And I know of the parts of me that I'm ignoring. So good call for action, Linda. Thank you so much once again for being on TNM Unplugged. Everybody else, thank you so much for joining this podcast. We're loving that you're loving us. We're loving that you're sharing us. We know you learned something beautiful and significant today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until we meet next time, be safe, be good, and lots of love to everybody. Bye for now.